Hey, everybody out there in podcast land, it is time for the latest, the greatest episode of the Fortress of Rock. I, of course, am your humble and gracious host, the Maestro Kevin Crane, here on November the 22nd, 2024. This is episode 171 of the Fortress of Rock. As always, glad to have you aboard for this fun, this extravaganza, this festival, this carnival of rock and roll. So we'll start off as always with news of the world, our tribute to the late, great Freddie Mercury and Queen. And I will just give you fair warning, I have got some rants interspersed throughout this entire episode. So when I go off on a tangent, and you know I want to go off on a tangent, I love to go off on a tangent, because that's what makes this fun. The opinions, let you know how I feel. Feel free to drop me a comment and let you know how you feel. But when I get upset, when I get angry, when I get passionate about something, I'm going to share it with you, of course, involving the world of music and rock and roll. So first up, a lot of Van Halen news this week. We'll start off with Sammy Hagar. About half here of our first segment's going to take into account a lot of Van Halen and a lot of Sammy Hagar. So in a shocking turn of events, I think it's shocking because I think it once again proves that Sammy Hagar is not the jovial, fun, wonderful guy that everybody thinks he is. Van Halen being my favorite band of all time, I have done the research, I have read all the books, and nobody is innocent in all the drama and all the nastiness and the group dynamics that have gone on since the mid-70s. But Sammy is not the cool, awesome, fun-loving guy everybody thinks he is. He is a cold, calculated businessman and, as Eddie said, solo artist. If you don't fall in line with Sammy Hagar, he will ditch you at the drop of a hat. And now, the latest victim, Jason Bonham. Jason Bonham had to bail out, as we've discussed here, late summer here in 2024. Jason Bonham had to bail out of the last handful of shows on the Best of All Worlds tour due to his mother having a stroke. He had to fly back overseas. Perfectly understandable. Perfectly understandable. Supposedly, the Red Rocker gave his blessing and said, do what you got to do, be with your family. And he had to reach out at the last minute, and I understand, and fans are thankful, especially me, because one of those shows that could have gotten canceled or postponed was the one I went to at the end of the tour in Noblesville, Indiana. And we'll get to that venue here in a few minutes. But he reached out to Kenny Aronoff. Of course, Kenny Aronoff, probably most well known for being John Cougar Mellencamp's longtime drummer. He did also fill in with Chickenfoot when Chad Smith had to drop out due to obligations with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. But now, in a shocking turn of events, as Sammy talks about recording new music with the Best of All Worlds band, and now here recently saying that he wants to do another run in the Best of All Worlds tour, changing up the Van Halen songs, maybe throwing in some Chickenfoot, some different songs from his time with Montrose. he comes out and he says, in a very sneaky kind of way, basically tells Jason Bonham, no, we're going with Kenny Aronoff. So Kenny Aronoff is now in. Jason Bonham is out. After roughly a decade playing with Sammy Hagar. And you guys can judge. I can judge. We all have our individual ways of looking at things and our past. If we've had a sick relative, maybe that will influence or color the way we look at this. But I find it very, very odd and very sad that Sammy Hagar would bail on Jason Bonham because he had to go home and tend to his sick mother. I have heard nothing to indicate that Jason Bonham was not more than willing to jump back on for new studio music, jump back in for a new tour in 2025 or whenever it will happen. So yes, I am cynical, even though I love Sammy Hagar. I don't trust many people in this world, and I would definitely never, ever, ever trust Sammy Hagar. And this is just another example of how I look at him very cautiously. And anybody who deals with him, I would deal with him very cautiously and wait for the knife in the back. Because until I hear some other reason why Jason Bonham was excluded from going forward with the Best of All Worlds band, this looks really bad, really callous, really cruel for Sammy Hagar. Now maybe karma decided to drop a little misery into Sammy's lap because of this. Now we all know Sammy Hagar, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, extraordinary businessman. And you've got to be cold and cruel in the world of business, no matter what business you're in. But Sammy Hagar and his friend, celebrity chef Guy Fieri, they created a company called Santos Spirits. Of course, we all know Sammy has been into the tequila and the rum business for a long time. So Santos Spirits was starting to take off. But unfortunately, they had $1 million worth of product, limited edition liquor, cases upon cases upon cases, stolen at the U.S.-Mexico border. Over 24,000 bottles, basically 2 trucks worth, 440 cases of premium adult beverages. Tequila, some of it very, very rare, very expensive, many, many years in terms of aging involved. You can't get that back. So, now I'm not saying I think this is necessarily just, given what Sammy did to Jason Bonham, but who knows, when you upset the rock and roll gods, who knows what's going to happen to you. Now, part of this big announcement from Sammy Hagar about the new music and possibly touring again in 2025 or beyond with the Best of All Worlds band, of course, by now you should know that is Sammy Hagar, Michael Anthony, Joe Satriani, and yes, now Kenny Aronoff. Just call it chicken foot. Just call it chicken foot and be done with it. Las Vegas. Of course, everybody has to play Las Vegas when they need some money. It's easy. You book a residency, rake in the cash. You don't have to worry about moving and trucks and roadies and all that stuff. So Sammy Hagar and the Best of All Worlds Band, as it is now constituted, will be playing a Las Vegas residency, 9 dates at Dolby Live at Park MGM in April and May of 2025. Now, based on the fact that we are seeing footage and scraps of video of these guys in the studio already, my mind tends to run to the fact that we could get a new album next year, next summer, and then again, as Sammy has already stated, we could get another run in mid to late summer 2025 of the Best of All Worlds 2.0. I would be very, very much in favor of checking that out, despite the fact that I have my misgivings about Mr. Hagar. But again, we have a discussion coming up in a few minutes about a particular venue that I frequent, and I'm sure many of you out there, wherever you live, have had to deal with the same types of issues. We'll get to it in a minute. We still got one little tidbit here with Van Halen. Now, I finally got my hands on a copy of Brothers. Of course, this is Alex Van Halen's memoir. So I will have, hopefully, a review of that for you. I'm hoping before the end of the year. I have another book I'm reading, and I don't want to break away from that. Plus, with all the different movies and music and holiday festivities going on, still got a few more concerts on the agenda. I am not the fastest reader in the world. I love to savor a book. Now, I have read thousands of books in my life, but I tend to take my time with books. I tend to savor them. I'm probably one step away from highlighting passages, and I know a lot of you out there probably do that, and I'm cool with that. So that's why I only read about 10 to 11 books a year. So I'm hoping to get Brothers knocked out before the end of 2024. But as Alex Van Halen does his press, does his tour to promote the book, he seems to be opening up a little bit more about the possibility of working on and releasing the unheard music in the Van Halen vault. He just came out this past week with a specific quote saying there is probably, quote, 3 or 4 LPs, unquote, worth of unheard Van Halen music in the vault. That is great, great news, because I'll tell you, as a Van Halen fan, a year or two ago, I was skeptical because of the lack of enthusiasm from Wolfgang. And I know Wolfgang's got his own thing going on, and I'm hoping we get some new music from Mammoth WVH in 2025. But to hear Alex actually come out and say a lot of positive, encouraging things over the last month, including he dismissed, of course, the auction of a lot of his equipment and his drum kits, and great to hear him say, I'm not retiring, I've got the back issue, I'm simply trying to get through that. I will be back out performing and playing music again at some point a few years down the road. And now for him to say 3 or 4 LPs worth of unheard Van Halen music, and of course he has also qualified that by saying some of it's snippets, some of it is unfinished songs. We've discussed here in the past month or two things he said about bringing Robert Plant in to sing vocals on some of these songs. Hopefully, when we get to 2025, we'll hear some more about Alex and Wolfgang moving forward with getting this music prepped and ready to go for the Van Halen fans and the rock and roll world in general to listen to this stuff, to release it so we can listen to it. All right, we have been dabbling a lot lately in TV, movies, other forms of media outside of strictly music. But of course, it all involves the bands, performers that we love. We've had a lot of documentaries lately. We've talked about Bon Jovi over the last year. We've talked about Nickelback. We've talked recently about Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. This one, even though they're not my favorite band in the world, I would be very intrigued whenever this comes out. And it sounds like it's still a ways away from completion. But I would be very intrigued, given the backstage drama with this band, very interested to watch a documentary about Fleetwood Mac. The surviving members, by what I have read, what I have found in my research, they have all signed off on the first authorized documentary of Fleetwood Mac, which will be produced by Apple and Frank Marshall. And Frank Marshall has been big into these documentaries as of late when it comes to musicians and performers. So it's going to come with a high pedigree. And of course, we all know you had Christine McVie and John McVie were married, and then Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks were together, but Mick Fleetwood had a fling with Stevie Nicks, and Don Henley from the Eagles had a fling with Stevie Nicks. So there's a lot. I mean, we've gone from Van Halen. We all know about the melodrama with Van Halen. Now we're talking about another band in Fleetwood Mac with different types of melodrama. Whereas Van Halen, it was more male egos and infighting, and now we're talking about romance and interpersonal relationships, intimate relationships among band members. So a lot of melodrama with Fleetwood Mac as well, but very different type of melodrama. So be interesting to see when that comes out. I would imagine we won't see that until late 2025 at the very earliest, if not into 2026. Now we do have some moments of silence, people who have left us in the world of music. A few months back, when we took a trip in the rock and roll DeLorean, we happened to discuss in one of our anniversary segments the recording of the James Bond theme. Of course, we all know that signature guitar riff. That was one Vic Flick. I'm not making the name up. And unfortunately, the man behind that great guitar riff has left us. Vic Flick passed away here recently, as did, now let's be honest, when we think of the Bee Gees, we think about Barry, Maurice, and Robin Gibb, and that's it. But there were other people involved with the Bee Gees, considering the fact that their history goes all the way back to the 60s. Two of the Bee Gees drummers from two different eras, one going way back to the beginning, one going to the disco era in the 70s, Dennis Bryan and Colin Peterson, eerily, both passed away within a week or two of each other. So we send out thoughts and prayers to Vic Flick, Dennis Bryan, Colin Peterson, their families, and their friends. All right, let's move on to our tour news for the week. We're starting to get a little bit more traction. I would have thought by now we would have had much bigger announcements for 2025 tours. There are issues that I have. And once I get through these first two tour announcements and get to the final one to wrap up News of the World, then I will go on my rant for a few minutes, and you can choose to side with me, say I'm crazy, but you guys know how passionate I am about live music. So first up, if you're into the festivals, the big huge festivals, Lollapalooza, I mean there's so many now. The big ones though, you know, and one of the big ones is Coachella. So if you're into Coachella, of course Coachella takes place this year at least. I'm not as familiar with it as I probably should be, but in 2025 it will be 2 weekends, 6 total shows, of course. Different headliner every night for 2 weekends. When I say different, I mean Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the same 3 headliners the next weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But 3 different headliners for each weekend. But the same headliners. Sorry, very confusing. So your 3 headliners who will be playing 2 weekends at Coachella are Lady Gaga, Green Day, and Post Malone. Not a lot of rock and roll to be found from what I could tell as I ran through the lineups for Coachella. So outside of Green Day and maybe 1 or 2 other stragglers, this is not a music festival for us, the diehard rockers. But I know a lot of you out there have expanded your music horizons. I'm still stubborn old man who will only listen to hard rock, classic rock, hair metal, disco, and old school R&B. So Coachella, not really for me. Maybe this is something for you, though. Of course, depends a lot on disposable income and where you live. Elvis Costello has got a new run of dates set up with pianist Steve Niev. I hope I got his name right, Niev. Who is actually a member of the Attractions. But Elvis Costello only going out with Steve Niev, not the full lineup of the Attractions. 15 U.S. dates running through February and March of 2025. I do believe, if I read this correctly, that he's got a 3-night run in Chicago where he will bring in additional musical guests. And from what I can tell, that would be most of the rest of the Attractions, his legendary backing band. And then finally, here we go. Put your finger over the nuclear button because the Maestro is about to go ballistic. Not because of the concert. This is going to be kind of a story time with the Maestro, leading into a massive, elegant, angry rant. Rod Stewart and Cheap Trick are going out on tour next year. One Last Time is the tour. 20 dates in North America. Now there's a lone date off on its own in Texas in March, and then the rest of the dates will be June, July, and August of 2025. And of course, this will be a big enough tour where it's going to hit major venues across the U.S. My problem resides here. It has nothing to do with Rod Stewart. It has nothing to do with Cheap Trick. It has to do with my local venue. Now, I don't want to alienate everybody out there by just singling out what has been one of my favorite concert venues throughout my entire life. Now, keep in mind, I'm in my 50s, and I have been going to this particular venue since I was in my 20s. So it's been around quite a while. And it is listed as one of the most popular music venues in the United States. It is Ruoff Music Center in Noblesville, Indiana, outside of Indianapolis. Holds approximately 18,000, give or take. Always, each and every year, has a stellar lineup of concerts. Starting as soon as the weather gets better, usually that would be late April, early May, carrying all the way through to late September. When it was first opened, it was called Deer Creek because there's a little rivulet that runs along the outskirts of the venue. Yes, called Deer Creek. It has got to be so disgusting and nasty now, considering the number of people who have decided to urinate in said creek over the years and the decades. But for anybody in Indiana, this venue holds a special place in all of our hearts. Because for pretty much anybody in the state of Indiana, this is the most easily accessible big music venue within 2 to 2.5 hours you can get to. If you don't want to deal with Chicago, this is it. And we have not had any problems over the years, my friends and I. We have gone to see anywhere from 4 or 5 up to 8 or 9 concerts a year at the Ruoff Music Center. That's, of course, its new corporate name. At times it was called the Klipsch Music Center. It has had many, many different corporate names, and I'm sure all of you can relate to that with your local big music venues. But we've started to see over the last couple years some chinks in the armor, some cracks in the fan-friendly experience at the Ruoff Music Center. Now, we're not complaining about, nobody's complaining about beer price. You go into a NFL game, you go to a NASCAR race, you go to a Major League Baseball game. You walk in the door, you know you're going to be paying $15 to $20 for an adult beverage. You're going to pay $5 for a bottle of water. Now, luckily, a lot of these venues have started to put in water fountains where you can fill a plastic bottle. I think that's kind of more of a legal issue. You don't want people collapsing in the middle of the summer from dehydration on the lawn because they didn't want to pay $5 for a bottle of water. So I think that's more of a CYA issue for the venues. But now last year, and I know as we've been doing this podcast, this is probably a story you guys know. Last year I tried lawn passes for Ruoff Music Center. You get in, you pay your flat fee, which last year, 2023 was, I can't remember the exact dollar amount. It was somewhere in the mid 200s, right around 250, somewhere in there. And that lets you basically go to any concert throughout the year for lawn seats. Now, as I'm getting older, I'm realizing throughout last year's lawn pass season that physically it's just a nightmare. Very, very hard to deal with sitting in the lawn chair in the hot sun in July and August. But I was still fine with it for the most part. But we started to notice things. We started to notice changes in the parking lot where there used to be a lot more access points in and out of the parking lots. And then they decided to close off one of the main arteries for getting in and out of the parking lot to give it off to Uber, drivers. So that made it much, much more difficult for the normal people like you and I to get in and out of the venue. Because our time doesn't matter. Our time isn't important. Okay, still free parking, still good. Then we notice a couple shows later on in the year where we show up and we're told you can't bring in your lawn chairs. We're like, what? What? No, security reasons. We're afraid because this is a hard rock concert that people are going to be throwing lawn chairs and it's going to be a liability issue. So you can't bring in your outside lawn chairs even if they meet specifications. Try standing for 4 hours on this hard-packed hill in the lawn section. There's plenty of venues out there in the U.S., again, you guys probably know some, that are set up the same way. I know Tinley Park, Illinois, same situation. Now, here in the off season, as we're gearing up for the 2025 concert season, and this Rod Stewart and Cheap Trick concert is announced, my friends and I decided, let's just see what it looks like. What do the ticket prices look like? Probably going to be a little bit too expensive. I'm not a big Rod Stewart fan, so it's not going to break my heart if I never see him in concert, but found out a couple things. Earlier this week, when the pre-sale started, I found out, number one, if you wanted to, and we weren't looking at it sitting on the lawn, but if you want to sit on the lawn, and God bless you, I understand, get the cheapest possible seats you can. You're all about the music, and that's why I love you guys that think like this, that do this, because we're all on a budget. We're all struggling to make ends meet. Nothing wrong with, you can't afford a $90 seat in the pavilion, so $45 on the lawn works for you. I'm all down with that. I used to be there too until my back and my feet started giving out. So now I've been looking more just at seats, paying the extra for the seats. But Ruoff Music Center has now instituted a policy. Number one, no outside lawn chairs will be allowed for any event in 2025. You must rent a lawn chair from them ahead of time. Otherwise, you can sit on a blanket for 4 hours. Garbage. Absolute garbage. Money grab number one for 2025. Money grab number two is that now you will have to pay for the first time ever in, I believe, 3 decades. You will have to pay to park at Ruoff Music Center outside of Indianapolis, Indiana. $20 ahead of time, $25 day of show is my understanding. And I know a lot of you out there in New York or Chicago or LA are going, boo, poo, poo, pity. We pay more than that. I know. I get it. It's all wrong. It's all wrong. especially when you're talking about a venue that's out in the middle of nowhere where you have no other choice. That's the problem I've got with this. If I was going into downtown Chicago or I was going into downtown Indianapolis, I would expect to pay for parking. But I would also expect an easier in and out. And I also expect to have restaurants and bars all around to make it easier for me to get there early, to relax, settle in, have dinner, a couple adult beverages, and then have an easy walking distance to the venue. That's the benefit of being in a downtown area. The Ruoff Music Center is out in the middle of nowhere. You are being held hostage now. Either you don't go to the show or you pay us $20 parking. That's garbage. That's mercenary. That's greed part 2. So my little rant here, on top of all that, to point all this wonderful greed from the live music business to you, pointed out to you guys, and I know a lot of you already know, you've already experienced it wherever you live. But to put a little bow on this before we move on to reviewing some new music, hopefully kind of bringing the mood up a little bit. What are you doing to the true blue music fan? You are trying to box us out. You're trying to price us out. When I heard stories about Taylor Swift fans that were flying overseas to go see Taylor Swift concerts in Europe because even with airfare and tickets, it was cheaper than coming to a local venue in America to see the show, there's something wrong. There's something really, really, really wrong. We are trying to make this all corporate. We don't want the true music fans at the shows. We want the rich idiots who are going to do nothing but talk through the entire show, film the entire show on their cell phones, or take selfies. And people that don't really care about the music. Last example before I move on. Now, I will say this. This is the latest. I'm talking now. We're into late November, right? It's November the 22nd tonight. I don't think I've ever gone this late into a year without having at least one concert set up for the next year. And I have 0 concerts set up right now for 2025 between exorbitant ticket prices, the scams of... Now, I'm not blaming Live Nation for what Ruoff did. This sounds to me like this is our Ruoff management decision. I don't think Live Nation pushed this on them, but Live Nation is obviously not guiltless in this. Found out that Jack White, of course we discussed this, that he's going out on tour. Decided to check into tickets to see him up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Tickets went on sale today. Originally, and I wasn't going to pay this anyway, but originally face value for standing room only tickets at 20 Monroe Live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is a more intimate venue. So yes, there are fewer seats, fewer, again, it's standing room, so fewer people allowed in the venue, let's put it that way. So $100 standing room. Okay, still too rich for my blood. All tickets sold out in a matter of minutes today. I double-checked here about an hour ago. Let's say about 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. about 7 hours after they went on sale. They are being resold for almost double already. Double face value. This is the flaw. This is the problem with Live Nation and Ticketmaster. And I know we're having this transition of power here after the election, but hopefully Congress has not forgotten about the problems that Ticketmaster and Live Nation have created for the fans. And they're going to get into this, and they're going to break this monopoly up, because it's a travesty. It's sick that we have allowed Ticketmaster and Live Nation to suck all the fun out of going to a live event. And they don't care. They think they're untouchable, and they think they can just laugh in our faces. And again, they don't care about the music. They don't care about the true fans. They care about the almighty dollar. And some of you are going to say, hey, that's business. The only problem is it's not just business. We're talking about the creative arts here. We're talking about music. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the price of tickets to go see a movie. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the price of a streaming service. Access to the creative realm. There has to be a balance. And I'm sure we'll get into more of this later on as more concerts get announced. But I'll tell you what, I've already planned on, unless it's absolutely somebody I must see, I have already planned on boycotting the Ruoff Music Center for 2025. And I told you guys, anywhere from 5 to 9 concerts a year, they've lost my money. They've lost my business. I rattled off with a friend of mine when we talked about this. Rattled off the 2 or 3 bands we would probably break down and go see if we absolutely had to go to Ruoff to see them. Otherwise, no repeats. We're not going back to see somebody that we've seen in the past. It's got to be somebody unique that we don't know if we're going to get to see this band or this performer again. That's the only qualification, the only way we're going to pay for this parking scam on top of everything else, the higher ticket prices, everything else. All right. I know I went very, very long with News of the World. I warned you. Though, it was coming. All right, so now we move on to segment 2, and segment 2 will be fairly quick because we don't have a full new album to review. Kind of cheating this week, so that's why I felt like I could take some liberties with News of the World, because we're going to review a couple songs, but we're also going to review a live album. I know. I don't even know why I put these rules in effect. Usually I don't like to review live albums or greatest hits albums, but it's that time of year where there's not a lot of new content out there. So we are going to review here in segment 2, Nickelback, live from Nashville. All right, so we all know about the legendary Love 'Em or Hate 'Em label that's on Nickelback. And I'm not going to spend much time on that. You either love them or you hate them. There you go. I happen to love them. Did not get to see them on the tour last year. So, Live from Nashville, their brand new live CD, is kind of a nice little replacement for me. My friend who went to see them pretty much confirmed that this was, for the most part, the set list that they performed last year. And we're not going to go through all of it. It's a nice, for the price, I got it for $15, but you get 18 songs. I believe the Walmart edition has an extra track, their cover of Don't Look Back in Anger by Oasis. And I think you get a guitar pick, too, for an extra couple bucks. But 18 songs, even though you know most of them, still not a bad deal. And I'm not going to run through the entire set list. I'm going to point out the songs that have guests, because it was obvious this is, as opposed to a lot of the live albums from back in the 80s where bands would record over 3 or 4 nights at different venues and they would piece together the best performances. And I think that's the best way to go. You're taking a chance when you're recording a live album one night at one venue, or a couple nights at one venue. The good thing about it is a mistake here, a mistake there actually lends some atmosphere and some legitimacy to the proceedings. So, again, lots of guest stars here on Nickelback Live from Nashville. Chris Daughtry sings harmony vocals on Savin' Me. There's a very weird short song by somebody named Ernest who takes over for a couple minutes and sings a song called Flower Shops, which has one really great line in it, but otherwise is a very mediocre, blah, short track. Somebody named Bailey Zimmerman, and I apologize. It seems like Nickelback is getting more into their country roots. So a lot of these people that I'm going to mention here are a little bit more entrenched in country music. So I'm sure this Bailey Zimmerman, who also sings harmonies on Rockstar, is somebody big in the world of country, maybe. Probably the highlight of the entire set, just because when I say it's the highlight, I'm saying it's just different. You're always looking for something different in a live show, whether it's that cool cover or a completely different take on one of the band's hit songs. In this case, Nickelback Live from Nashville, about halfway through the set, you get their version of Copperhead Road, the old Steve Earle hit. Chad Kroeger and company are joined by Brantley Gilbert and Josh Ross. Fantastic version of Copperhead Road. I'm not a fan of Steve Earle at all. He is, by all accounts, a despicable human being, but that's just my opinion. But you cannot dispute the fact that Copperhead Road is a phenomenal song. His one big hit. Nickelback, along with Brantley Gilbert and Josh Ross, do a tremendous job with their cover. And then, again, just like with Ernest on Flower Shops, we get towards the end of the set, Hardy. Now, I know a lot of you love Hardy. I know Hardy is extremely popular. I've seen him pop up on WWE shows. My friends know him. They play him a lot on the local hard rock heavy metal channel. So they basically let Hardy take over and play the song Sold Out, which is okay. But it's not going to convert me into a Hardy fan. My friend has tried. My friend has tried. He got me to watch a video last week of another Hardy song, which was a little bit better. But still, I have my limits when it comes to the top end of the spectrum, the harder end of the spectrum. You'll never get me into Pantera. I'm not going to get into Slayer for anybody. I'm topping out at Metallica and Iron Maiden, and that's about as hard and heavy as I'll go. So another interesting addition in the set here, and I'm just jumping all over the place. There's no order to this. Um, Interesting that Nickelback was still playing a song from one of their two early albums before they hit it huge with Silver Side Up. They are still playing Worthy to Say from The State. So good for them on that front. And then the flaws I was talking about, since this is obviously a 1 or 2 night set from Nashville, you're going to have issues, you're going to have problems, you're going to have mistakes. And Chad Kroeger screws up the lyrics on Figured You Out, which is one of my favorite Nickelback songs, easily. But I'm not sure what he was trying to combine. I know they're right around the time he messed this up. He basically uses the word checkles. And he jokes about it during the song in the set. And I know there are lines in there about, I like the freckles on your chest. I like the way you pass the check. So somewhere in there, he got some words mixed up. Freckles and maybe check or chest. Somehow got that mixed up. But he jokes about it during Figured You Out. So that's kind of a fun moment. Spontaneous. What you're looking for in a live set. But the only other thing I'm going to say about Nickelback live from Nashville, you know the songs, outside of the differences, the covers, the unique songs that I've mentioned. You get 3 songs from the last album, Get Rollin'. Little bit too heavy overall on the mid-tempo and the slower songs. I would have liked a few more rockers. Because outside we get San Quentin, we get Animals, we get Figured You Out, we get Rockstar, and then we get Burn It to the Ground to close the set out. Out of 18 songs, to me, I can still do math. That's 5 hard rockin' songs. So they leaned a little bit too heavily on the crowd pleasing mid-tempo stuff. So I wasn't a big fan of that. I always liked their down and dirty side, especially from The Long Road, which I think is by far their best album. But there is a lot of adult lyrics on there, a lot of sexuality, a lot of I'm sure people would say misogyny. But it kind of reminds me of old school 80s rock and roll turned up to 11. And I say there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Sorry. If you don't like it, you're in the wrong place. That's all 80s music, the music I love. And if you can't take it, I don't know. No snowflakes allowed here. Let's put it that way. So, Nickelback Live from Nashville is a nice sampler of the band's collective work. They are competent and solid in concert. You're not going to get any long drawn out solos. So in a way it's kind of paint by numbers, but I think they are very smart when it comes to the songs they craft. They're never boring. Let's put it that way. They're never boring. So I would recommend Live from Nashville to you. And if you know somebody who's a big Nickelback fan, perfect Christmas gift for them. Like I said, 18 songs, run you about $15 on CD. Not a bad deal. Not a bad deal at all for those who you buy presents for who are still into physical music. And there are so few of us now. So sad. Alright, I got 2 new songs for you, and then that will lead into my one other rant for this episode. Rick Springfield. Let's go back to the 80s, but let's go back to the more pop rock, visual MTV 80s. Rick Springfield, brand new song, which I believe is going to be a bonus track as he's got an upcoming greatest hits package coming out. I believe this is his second. It's covering the latter part of his career. From what I read, I think it goes from the album Karma on to his last album, Automatic. I mention Automatic not only for that, to give it some context, but because after listening to a couple songs off of Automatic, I believe we reviewed one or two last year here on the Fortress of Rock, because it came out in 2023. Very different style for Rick Springfield. And I did not like it. I did not like it at all. I did not even bother to listen to the entire album based on the first couple of releases, the first couple of singles. So Lose Myself is a little bit more of a refreshing return to form to a point. Now this will lead me into my second rant of the evening. I did look at comments as I watched the videos on YouTube for this song and our next song we're going to review. And you got the generic love affair out there. All, oh my God, I'm so glad you're back. Your sound's awesome. Thank you so much for giving us new music. And I'm fine with that. I'm absolutely fine with that. Praise them. Praise them, stroke their ego, make them feel good so we get more new music. But somebody pointed out, with Rick Springfield's new song, Lose Myself, I would love to hear this on the radio, but obviously you would have to release an edited version. Why? Whereas with Automatic, his last album, Rick Springfield was experimenting with bizarre, different sounds that just didn't mesh with who we know him to be from the 80s. And then Lose Myself, while it goes back in terms of the hook and the musical structure to his classic 80s era albums and songs, he's got to throw in the nasty language. I don't understand, and I curse all the time. I don't do it on this podcast because I want this to be accessible for everyone. And I think that's what this one person who commented on the video was trying to say is, you're never going to get on the radio again if you're dropping curse words 4 or 5 times during a song, Rick. And the commenter was right. I look at it more, and I'm not trying to say Rick Springfield is desperate for attention or desperate to stay in the limelight. But it seems like over the last few years, with what we've heard from him, he's trying one way or the other too hard to be edgy, to be cool for this generation. And sometimes you've just got to accept the fact that let's just be cool for the generation that made you popular. And let's not alienate them. And it seems like Rick Springfield is trying very, very hard to alienate his older fans in favor of somehow thinking he's going to bring in a whole bunch of new fans. Keep that thought in mind, okay? For just a minute, and I'm going to revisit it. My wrap-up review here for Rick Springfield, Lose Myself. I liked it. The cursing didn't bother me as much as it does other people. But it does point out something that's going on with Dr. Noah Drake. That he's trying too hard to stay relevant when he doesn't have to. It's obvious he's still got some good... Either he's writing good music or people are writing good music for him. There are a lot of people, dare I say, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people out there who would be more than happy to just get the more simple pop rock hooks from the 80s from Rick Springfield, and just stop trying too hard to be cool and edgy for a new generation. So Lose Myself, I will give a tepid recommendation to. It's better than what he was putting out on his last album, but it's still not the good stuff from Working Class Dog, all those great albums, Don't Talk to Strangers, Affair of the Heart, all that great stuff from the 80s. Now, let's go back and revisit the topic I brought up about bands and performers trying to reinvent themselves. And this is a topic that I have brought up many times in the past. Next week we'll probably talk about it a little bit more when it comes to U2, and I have addressed that in the past. How they let me down in the 90s completely with pop and Zooropa. But a small band that, if you guys have been listening to the podcast for quite a while, know that I love. I have my handful of small bands that I really love, and I hope you do too. You shouldn't just be in love with the big bands, the classic rock artists, the Hall of Famers. There should be some smaller bands out there that you love, that you follow. That's what makes music special and unique, is how we can, each and every one of us can give it our own particular take and spin based on our opinions and what bands and what songs, big and small, connect with us. So one of those bands for me is the Black Moods. When I saw them open for Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers, another small band. This was about 7 or 8 years ago at Bell's Eccentric Cafe in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Fell in love with the band. Loved them, loved them, loved them. Now I will say this. They have released 3 new songs over the last, I would say about 7 months. They do this. They've premeditated how they did this with their last album. They will release their music, their songs in dribs and drabs. I'm sure we're going to get a new album from them, but it probably won't be till mid-2025, and half the album will already be out. That's pretty much what they did with their last album, and that's fine. As long as we're getting new material, that's all I care about. However, the first 2 releases, Sugar and Heaven, I was very, very, very unimpressed with. A new production sound, a little bit more sleek, a little bit more polished. This is where I will bring in, again, watching the video on YouTube, looking at the comments, and how the comments, while there is the unabashed adoration, there is every once in a while somebody will jump in, and I'm not a big social media guy, but I just happen, in the case of these 2 songs, Rick Springfield and now the Black Moods, to read the comments. And just like with Rick Springfield, one person jumped in with a very thoughtful, interesting comment. Now the 3rd song, the one we're going to review here on Friday night, November the 22nd, is Passion. This would be the 3rd release. Passion is better. Passion reminds me more of the old school straight ahead rockin' that I've gotten from the last Black Moods albums. I believe they have 4 out. All exemplary. All great, great albums. But as I mentioned, the first 2 songs they've released since their last album, Sugar and Heaven, were not very good. And the new one, Passion, is better. But somebody comments, and says, I'm not sure I like the new direction that the band is going in. Of course, some know-it-all has to jump in and say, you don't understand. These bands get bored playing the same style over and over and over again, so they have to change things up so they can bring in new fans. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the gist of the other comment. This one that set me off. And I am aware of the trappings of social media and how it's a tar pit and how you can get stuck in it, arguing with everybody who has a difference of opinion with how you feel or how you see things. But this one I could not let slide. I could not let this one slide, so I had to respond to this gentleman. I believe it's a gentleman, not trying to presume. But I explained my case to him, and I said, listen, I have been a huge Black Moods fan for the last 7 or 8 years. I agree with the other person who posted that the new direction the last few songs have gone in is not encouraging. But I did throw in there, I said, I find it arrogant and pretentious for you to lecture everybody else on what it means for a band to try something different musically. We don't need you to lecture us. Okay? So just say you like it or you don't like it. Don't act like you're a music professor at UCLA who thinks he or she is better than everybody else. So we'll see what kind of response I get to that. And I hope I don't come off like that. I hope I really don't, because all I'm trying to do is expose everybody to all this music. You listen to it and like it, or listen to it and hate it. I'm cool with that. I will never tell you, well, if you don't like this, you're stupid. That's not what the Fortress of Rock is about. So hopefully I have never, ever, ever given off that kind of vibe here in the last 3 years. So, to summarize, mild recommendations for everything here in Breakdown, our tribute to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Nickelback live from Nashville. Again, if you love them, you hate them, that's going to dictate whether or not you're going to be interested in this album. Rick Springfield's Lose Myself, kind of a return to form, except with cursing. And the Black Moods' Passion, better than the last couple songs, but I am firmly with that one commenter, that one poster, in that I still don't know if I like the direction the band is going in. I've got somebody tapping on my shoulder. Oh, look, it's Doc Brown. He must be telling me that the rock and roll DeLorean is fired up and ready to go. So it's time for me to wander into the rock and roll garage here at the Fortress of Rock, as Doc Brown and I are going to get set to head out into the rock and roll time stream for I Wanna Go Back. So, of course, I Wanna Go Back, our tribute to the late, great Eddie Money. Strapping myself in here, the passenger seat in the rock and roll DeLorean. Doc Brown's got to get us fired up to 1.21 gigawatts, but while he is doing that, I need to take care of business. Acknowledge sources, acknowledge the platforms where you can find the Fortress of Rock each and every Friday night. First up, sources, 3 main sources, and we had a lot of Van Halen news in segment 1, so that means I delved deeply into the Van Halen newsdesk.com. Great website for the Van Halen fanatic in your life. There are links out there. Some exceptional merchandise for Christmas. If you've got a Van Halen fan in your family, check out the Van Halen news desk. UltimateClassicRock.com and ThisDayInMusic.com. Also, invaluable sources of information each and every week here for the Fortress of Rock. And you found us somewhere, but you know there are multiple platforms all over the place where you can listen to us. It's all up to you. What is your preference? What's convenient for you? You can find the Fortress of Rock on Spotify, Pocket Casts, Apple, iHeartRadio, Overcast, Amazon Music, Castbox, Audible, and Good Pods. Don't forget to check out the Facebook page. Our great and glorious Facebook page has some extra fun stuff going on every weekend. As this episode prepares to drop Friday evening, we have already posted the Weekend Rock Project. Every Friday night, right around the time we drop a brand new episode of the Fortress of Rock, we also drop the Weekend Rock Project. We give you a name, a word, a theme, something, and you come back with your favorite song or songs that fit that name, that word, that theme. This week, we are looking for your favorite songs that repeat words in the title. And no, don't be cheap and lazy and pick a song that's got "and" a couple times or "the" a couple times. Pick some songs. There are plenty out there. This should be an easy one this weekend. Plenty out there. I will give you an example, and I grab double points right away. I pick the Monkees. A little bit me, a little bit you. So you got a repeat of little and a repeat of bit in the title. Double points. Or is that double points? You get the idea. I would give you more, but then I'd be spoiling picks for you, and I don't want to do that. Then also, every Sunday is New Music Sunday, where I will post a brand new YouTube video, whether it's fully produced or just a visualizer or just a static video with the song playing over an image. Got to get the new music out there every Sunday. We will have a new song for you, and this Sunday will be no exception. Sunday afternoon, taking a break from my NFL viewing. I will drop a new video for you this coming Sunday and every Sunday on the Facebook page for the Fortress of Rock. All right, we are in the rock and roll time stream. I've got the thumbs up from Doc Brown. Let's start off with birthdays here for November the 22nd. We just talked Road Diary in Breakdown last week. Wonderful documentary about the 2023 Bruce Springsteen tour with the E Street Band. And of course, the arguably outside of the boss, Clarence Clemens, long gone. We missed the big man. So of who's left, arguably the most important member left of the E Street Band, Little Steven Van Zandt. Born on this day, November the 22nd, 1950. Also born on this day, November the 22nd, 1950. Bass player for Talking Heads, member of the Tom Tom Club, Tina Weymouth. And I will say this again. I know I ranted and raved about this probably about a year ago. If you have never seen Stop Making Sense, the greatest concert film ever, what are you waiting for? You have got to see this movie. It is incredible. Even if you're not a huge Talking Heads fan, and I'm not, bar none, best concert film ever. Born on this day, November the 22nd, 1943, Floyd Sneed, drummer for Three Dog Night. And then finally in birthdays, November the 22nd, 1941, Jesse Colin Young, vocalist, bass player for the Youngbloods, of course, known for their one huge hit, Get Together. Now we move on to anniversaries for November the 22nd. On this day, November the 22nd, 2002, an ambitious project was announced, The Doors of the 21st Century. A new version of The Doors featuring original members Ray Manzarek and Robbie Krieger. They were going to bring in perfect fit on vocals. The Cult's Ian Astbury, and then Stuart Copeland on drums. Stuart Copeland had a mishap, had an issue, had to be replaced. There were legal issues because of that. I do believe they did go out, play some shows, and again, Ian Astbury, perfect fit to replace. Nobody can replace Jim Morrison, but if you had to pick somebody, Ian Astbury, perfect fit to replace Jim Morrison in The Doors of the 21st Century. On this day, November the 22nd, 1998, supposed former Infatuation Junkie, the #1 album in the U.S. on this day by Alanis Morissette. One of the saddest days in rock and roll history. November the 22nd, 1997. Fantastic frontman for INXS, Michael Hutchence, was found dead in his Sydney, Australia hotel suite. Of course, just like with Chris Cornell, rumors, speculations about, was it suicide, was it autoerotic asphyxiation? I don't know if we've ever gotten a clear answer on either to this day. And I know INXS at the time was on the downswing in terms of their career trajectory. But if there was any band that could have stood the test of time, could have had major career bounce back after comeback, it would have been INXS with Michael Hutchence. So sad. Once again, on this day in 1997, INXS's lead singer Michael Hutchence found dead. On this day, November the 22nd, 1994, the reign of Pearl Jam continued through the heyday of the grunge era as Vitalogy. Their third album was released on this day in 1994. Now we go all the way back to November the 22nd, 1975, back to my disco wheelhouse and my favorite band from that era. Yes, Casey and the Sunshine Band. The #1 single in the U.S. November the 22nd, 1975. That's the way, I like it, Great stuff. Absolutely tremendous. On this day, November the 22nd, 1965, Bob Dylan marries Sarah Lowndes. Normally, I wouldn't really make note of this except for the fact that Sarah Lowndes happens to be the mother of Jakob Dylan of the Wallflowers. And finally, in anniversaries. On this day, November the 22nd, 1957, Tom and Jerry, no, not the cartoon characters, the duo, the musical duo, Tom and Jerry, appeared on American Bandstand. And you're going, Maestro, who the heck are Tom and Jerry? And if you don't know this, I am here to enlighten you. Tom and Jerry was the early moniker for Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel. So there you go, kids. That is going to do it for I Wanna Go Back. Doc Brown pulling us in to the rock and roll garage here at the Fortress of Rock. We're going to pull the drawbridge up over the moat. The moat is close to freezing here in late November. Not quite there yet. Still got some leaves to rake, believe me. Believe me, my neighbors, I'm sure, hate me because I have not been able to rake yet. But I will take care of it here in the next few days. Somehow find a way in between my rock and roll duties. But now we're shutting things down here on Friday night at the Fortress of Rock. Hoping to have a nice quiet night, a decent dinner, and watch Alien Romulus on Hulu. I've been waiting to watch this movie for months and months, but back to rock and roll, we're not quite done yet. You know the sequence, you know how it works. You've been following us for 3 years. Fourth and final segment is Wrap It Up, our tribute to the fabulous Thunderbirds, where we look to the future. We've looked at the present. We've looked at the past. Now it's time to look to the future. And the days for 2024 are winding down. Only a little over 5 weeks left. But we still got a nice slate set up for you. Things have come together here. So at least for the next 4 weeks, we have got definite reviews for you each and every week on the Fortress of Rock, starting with next week. No, I am once again pushing back the Smashing Pumpkins. Oh, they're like the redheaded stepchild of the Fortress of Rock. After I spent all that time listening to that 3 CD monstrosity last year, Autumn, I'm very, very hesitant to commit to Agori Mori Me, even though I have dabbled in it many times over the last couple months. It is now out physically today. So if you want a CD version of it, you can buy it today, November the 22nd. In terms of when I'm going to review it, I don't know. I don't know. Because here's the thing. They moved up the release of U2's remastered and expanded How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb, which of course features the 10 unreleased songs that make up How to Reassemble an Atomic Bomb. And those 10 songs are going to be our featured review next week in Breakdown here on the Fortress of Rock, episode 172 on November the 29th. The 10 unreleased lost tracks from the How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb sessions. How to Reassemble an Atomic Bomb next week, our featured album review here on the Fortress of Rock. And in 2 weeks, episode 173, December the 6th, more live music for you. Our annual trek down to the 8 Second Saloon in Indianapolis, Indiana for our Black Friday show, The Family Reunion with Jackal. And then the next week, the week after that, in 3 weeks, more live music. The last scheduled live review of 2024, episode 174 on December the 13th. Night Ranger, live at the Lerner Theater in Elkhart, Indiana. And then in 4 weeks, maybe Smashing Pumpkins make an appearance. Maybe. But we're getting to the point where we could also start giving you that year-end summary, top 5 concerts, top 5 songs, top 5 albums. Who knows? That could hit you on episode 175, dropping on Friday, December the 20th. That could kind of be my Christmas present to you, since that will be the last Fortress of Rock episode before Christmas. Seems like a good idea to give you a nice little special present. It's episode 175. That seems like that should be something of a special episode, right? Songs that we will be reviewing in the coming weeks. We've still got the new Jack White bonus song. He just released a bonus track from No Name. You Got Me Searching. We will not go into the concert, the prices thing. I will distance myself from that. I will separate the artist from the business. We're still looking at Steel Panther, bonus track from their new, remastered, expanded version of Feel the Steel, You Don't Make Me Feel Dumb. And then another one of those smaller bands, like the Black Moods, like Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers, that we follow, that we love here on the Fortress of Rock, is the Cold Stairs. Lead singer and guitarist Chris Tapp has a brand new song on his own called Old Lady Blues. I listened to it today. It is very, very good. So we will delve into that in the coming weeks here on the Fortress of Rock. We still got some Christmas songs we might review. Again, sounds like those would be wonderful for episode 175 on December the 20th. The Cold Stairs again, as well as Blackberry Smoke. And then I'm still debating whether or not to review Blackstone Cherry with Aaron Jones, American Horse. It's a definite possibility. Probably won't happen for a few weeks, but another one that I have listened to, I've sampled. It's not bad, but I'm on the fence. And so, as you know, we usually wrap things up here wrap it up with my tribute to the Billboard charts back when they were good. Back in the 70s and the 80s, early 90s, when they mattered, before SoundScan, before streaming destroyed everything. So we do our own charts here on the Fortress of Rock. Unfortunately, yes, it's just about me and what I've been listening to. But in a way, in a sense, I'm trying to promote new music. And if I tell you I've been listening to something, a song or an album, a lot, maybe that will spur you to give it a shot if you haven't already. So kind of a no-brainer here. Again, cheating, breaking the rules, breaking the law here on the Fortress of Rock. Number one album this week is Nickelback, live from Nashville. Top songs of the week. I cheat. I usually pick two. Two's better than one. The aforementioned song from Jack White, the new track left off of No Name, but now out for all of us to enjoy. Jack White's You Got Me Searching. one of our top songs of the week. And now we're going back a few weeks to the third single from the upcoming new album from Tremonti, The End Will Show Us How. Really growing on me. This song grows on me the more and more I listen to it. Jumping back in as one of our top songs of the week, Tremonti's One More Time. So to recap, number one album of this week, episode 171 on November the 22nd, 2024 on the Fortress of Rock. Number one album, Nickelback's Live from Nashville. Top songs, Tremonti's One More Time and Jack White's You Got Me Searching. And that is going to do it for another glorious episode of the Fortress of Rock. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm the Maestro, Kevin Crane. You are who you are. As it gets colder and nastier out there, we've got to get each other through the winter. Think of the spring. Think of the summer. The concerts. That will get us through. If you're lucky enough to be down in the South, in Florida and Texas, or on the West Coast where the music just flows and plays year-round, I hate you. No, just kidding. Just kidding. You're very lucky, very fortunate. Enjoy every minute of it. Being able to go to an outdoor concert in December or January. I don't know, do they really do that down there? And I know Florida can get down in the 30s and the 40s, but still. Outdoor concerts in winter? Let me know. Drop me a line. Send me a comment. Let me know. California, Texas, Florida, do you guys get outdoor concerts while we're suffering up here in the upper Midwest through the snow and the cold? But wherever you go, whoever you see, whatever concert you enjoy, take and love the one you're with. Until next Friday night, I'm the Maestro. Peace out.